In the second lesson, we will talk about an endgame planning. Let's start. There are two steps of a planning. First, you should realize what you're going to do. Secondly, you need to decide how exactly you will do it. Let's focus on the first step now. So, what is the object of an attack in an endgame? As you're all aware, there are three types of chess material: the king, the pieces, and the pawns. The king is often an object of an attack in a middle game stage. In an endgame, we usually can't attack it effectively because we don't have enough pieces for that. The most powerful attacking piece is a queen. Most often we mate an opponent's king by our queen exactly. In an endgame, usually the queens have been exchanged already. Therefore, this plan is not suitable for an endgame. Normally we can't attack the pieces because they are too mobile. An opponent always can just replace a piece and our attack will be for nothing. Finally, we come to the pawns. In an endgame, we can attack the pawns easily. Also, a pawn structure is a stable factor which can be changed quickly. That's why it's useful to use a pawn structure as a base for our planning. I'd like you to remember this important idea. A pawn structure becomes a key factor in an endgame. Later I'll tell you more about it. Okay, let's go forward. Concerning the pawns, there are your pawns and your opponent's pawns. This gives us two main endgame plans. You should attack the opponent's weak pawns, and the second, you should use your passed pawns. It's extremely important to know these two plans because it allows you to play any endgame position easily. Often one of these plans is impossible, and it logically means that you should realize the second one. Now let's say you have no passed pawns and no possibility to create one. Of course it means that you should attack the opponent's weak pawns in this case. Okay, which plan to choose if you can realize both of them? In this case, you should realize both plans. Well, why not? Okay, to be serious, this will help you to drag an opponent's defense apart and to make your attack even more powerful. In the next lesson we will discuss it more specifically. Let's talk about the first plan in more details. You should attack the opponent's weak pawns. What are the weak pawns? The rule says, a weakness is a pawn or square on a 5th or 6th rank which can be protected by a pawn. Generally, this statement is applicable for an endgame. However, there are some special features here because in an endgame it's simply to attack pawns. First, we may attack the pawns on any rank. Even a pawn on its initial position can be an object of an attack. Secondly, we may attack advanced pawns even if they are protected by other pawns. The opponent's advanced pawns are closer to our pieces, and that's why we can attack them quickly and easily. We may conclude that there are three types of weak pawns: isolated pawns, backward pawns, and advanced pawns. Isolated and backward pawns are the pawns which are not protected by other pawns. Advanced pawns are the pawns which made moves already. Usually it implies that such a pawn was advanced at least to 2 squares. This is a very useful knowledge. Now you know what exactly you should attack in an opponent's position. Let's see how it works in a practical game. We can see an endgame. One of the main plans for an endgame is to attack the opponent's weak pawns. In this position, black has an isolated pawn b7. The d5 pawn is isolated and advanced. The backward pawns are f7 and h7. The weakest pawn is the d5 one. That's why white should attack it first of all. The b7 pawn is also quite weak and perhaps white will take it also. The kingside pawns are good protected and it's difficult to attack them now. In the game, white played rook fd1, increasing the pressure on the d5 pawn. Black answered rook a8. He is attacking the a2 pawn, so white protects it. Rook d2, king f8. And here white played g4, threatening to go g5 after some preparation, drive away the knight and capture the d5 pawn. At the first sight it seems useless because black can simply respond g5. There is one very important thing though. The advanced pawns are good for an attack, but bad for defense. Though Capablanca stated this rule a long time ago, a lot of players still don't know it or underestimate its value. This is one of the key ideas in an endgame. We may also formulate this rule in another way. For an attacker it's good to advance pawns, and for a defender it's bad. Though black can play g5 now, but everything is not that simple. Including of the moves g4, g5 is in favor of white. White has made his position more active, black has weakened his position. For example, in the future white will be able to attack the advanced pawn g5 by his pieces, or by playing h4 or f4. White will be able to use the f5 square and to fix the knight there. That's why we can see that it really gives white a lot of interesting attacking possibilities. In the game, black played rook a5 instead of g5. White answered f3. Now the g5 becomes a real threat because black can't jump to the e4. This forces black to make a pawn move h6. h4. White is threatening g5 again, and it forces black to advance his pawns again. This example illustrates two useful ideas. First, if you can't attack the opponent's pawns right now, then you need to weaken them first. And the second, you should provoke an opponent to move his pawns, because it will weaken them. In this game, white uses these two rules perfectly. Black played g5. Should white take the g5 pawn or not? Of course not. In an endgame, an attacker's side should avoid pawn exchanges and try to win the opponent's pawns for nothing. Every pawn exchange raises an opponent's chances for a draw. If you have an advantage, you should try to win the opponent's pawns, and you have great chances to do it sooner or later. This powerful strategy allows you to win the game slowly but surely. That's why white played h5. This also fixes the black's weaknesses on the king side. When you attack an opponent's weaknesses, it's useful to fix it first. Otherwise, he can simply push his pawn and remove it from an attack. When you fix an opponent's weakness first, you can then bring more and more pieces to attack it. By the way, white did it while attacking the d5 pawn. White blockaded it by the rook and then brought all other pieces to attack it. Okay, black played rook a6, and another instructive situation happens. Now white can play knight f5 and take the h6 pawn then. Let's see what will happen in this case. Knight f5. Black will play something, well, let's say rook c5 to place the rook on the open file. Knight takes h6. Knight takes h5. It's a discovered attack. Knight takes f7. It's a forced inversion. Rook c1. King f2. Let's say king takes f7. G takes. Rook h6. Something like this may happen. Okay, let's stop here. Though white won a pawn, it's a big practical mistake for white to go onto this line. A few pawns have been traded already, and some more pawn exchanges are coming. This raises the black's chances for a draw and makes the position more unclear. As you already know, an attacker side should not exchange pawns but win them. Don't hurry up to take something. The opponent's weaknesses will not run away from you anyway. In the game, instead of all these things, White simply played king f2. White will improve his position first, and will then play knight f5 in more comfortable situation. Rook ba5, taking the a2 pawn, a4, b5. Black is trying to exchange the pawns, which is certainly a right idea for a defender side. In this position it doesn't help, however, because Black has too many weaknesses. Rook da2 supporting the pawn, b takes, and after an exchange, Black can't really take the rook because it will give White a powerful passed pawn on the a file. And that's why Black played rook b6, rook e8 check, king e7, knight f5 check. White puts his pieces on the best positions with tempos. By the way, we've been talking about the weak pawns all the time. Let's talk about weak squares also. What should you do about them? Should you fix them or attack them or what? First, I'd like to repeat that the weak squares are the squares on the 5th and 6th rank in the black's position, which can be covered by opponent's pawns. Since a weak square is on an opponent's territory, it's a very good position for your piece to attack the opponent's weak pawns. Indeed, you must fix a weak square. Why? The reason is because you will then be able to use it during all the game long. As you can see, your plan is still the same. You're going to attack opponent's weak pawns. You should use the weak squares to place your pieces there and to attack the opponent's weak pawns after that. In the current example, White uses the weak square f5 to attack the weak pawn h6. There followed king d7, rook a7 check, king e8. Should White take the h6 pawn now? We have discussed a similar situation already. Knight h6, knight takes h5, we'll start trading the pawns, which is in favor of a defender. Instead of that, White simply played knight d4. White doesn't hurry up. He can bring the king to the c3, protect his pawns, and only then will win the black pawns without any problems. Black has nothing to do anyway. White realized this plan in the game and won easily. Okay, let's make up some conclusions. The conclusions. There are two main endgame plans. First plan, you should attack the opponent's weak pawns, and the second plan, you should use your passed pawns. In this lesson, we have discussed the first plan. When you attack the opponent's weak pawns, you should attack isolated pawns, backward pawns, and advanced pawns. While attacking the pawns, you should try to weaken them, provoke an opponent to move his pawns. Next, you should fix them. And finally, you shouldn't exchange pawns, because you should try to win them. Okay, these are the main ideas concerning the first endgame plan. In the next lesson, we will analyze the second plan. Talk to you then.